Hi, welcome back to Wilde Speculations. I'm Daniel.
I'm Scott.
This week we talk about D&D Celebration and the upcoming State of the Roll on Thursday. Some interesting and somewhat divisive news.
Yeah. Some we've been saying was coming down the pipe for at least a year, if not more.
Yeah.
What do you want to start with?
Well, I guess the biggest news maybe the 2024 announcement, because that's the one that's causing the most consternation, I think.
Yes, and I have a theory as to why that is.
Okay.
So 2024, 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons. We're getting a revised rule set, republished core rule books, 5e, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, 5e.
Most people are saying it's 5.5.
Yeah. Whether that's the official title or just the community term for it. Coming out 2024. Completely compatible with all the 5th edition stuff they said. We've been expecting it for a while.
Yeah.
The reason I think the biggest division is because D&D has blown up in popularity so much during the time of 5th edition that I have a feeling that, I don't know if I want to say most, but a large chunk of D&D players have never lived through an expansion change.
No, that's true.
And it scares them. It's, it's what's, I mean, my first Rules Edition change was a year after I started playing in 87 when it went to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
So I've lived through, Advanced 2nd Edition, 3, 3.5, 4, 5, and now, so this is going to be my 7th rules change.
Yeah.
Or update.
And I think they want to try, they're trying like hell to not have anyone whisper the word 6th
Yes.
edition. 4th edition lost them a bunch of players.
Mm-hmm.
People just didn't adopt it. 5th edition, they got a lot of those people back, a lot of the people that were, and a bunch of new people, especially with streaming.
Yes.
Explosion.
Well, one thing I've noticed, and this may just be the human brain looking for a pattern, but D&D, it seems like, has dipped in popularity every time there's an even-numbered expansion, and gained popularity every time there's an odd-number expansion.
So what you're telling me is it's the opposite of the Star Trek.
Yes, because second edition kind of went to the big, was the big kind of drop. It coincided with Satanic Panic, all of that stuff.
Mm.
3rd edition got a little more popular again, little, less taboo, especially with 3.5. 4th edition dropped like a tank. 5th edition, they got people, like you said, they got people back. They got new people with streaming. And I don't know how superstitious anyone is over there, or if they've noticed that. I don't subscribe that there's anything actually to that. I think it's more just the human brain looking for patterns.
So some of this comes down to, why do games come out with new editions?
Yeah.
The number one reason is new ownership.
Mm-hmm.
The number 2 reason is proper evolution of the game.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why 3.5 came out is because TSR was bought.
Yeah.
And 4th edition came out as a result of an attempt to play the game a different way.
Yeah.
To evolve.
In their words, it was making it more in line with the MMORPGs.
Yeah. Which were, and
All
I
the
guess
rage.
are all the rage still.
Yeah.
But
it was at their initial spike in popularity.
Right.
Rose, this was announced during the D&D celebration that just happened over the weekend. And I do think, I don't remember his name, not Jeremy or Chris, the other guy that was in that panel, that actually mentioned
Ray.
The reason why I think it's going to be a 5.5 like, whether they call it that or not, I think it was a little bit of planning, a little bit of subtlety that he wore the advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which was also at the time backwards compatible with base Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes. And came about after TSR incorporated, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that nod to the edition that was designed as a backwards compatible upgrade.
Interesting.
I don't think it was just, oh, here's a D&D shirt.
So I don't think I'm the intended audience for this new book.
No.
Or these new books that are coming out. I think they are aiming these new books at every person who complains on Twitter about D&D. So I expect in this new player's handbook, there will be no racial ASIs.
Mm-hmm.
They may get rid of racial proficiencies the way I did in my origin system.
Possibly.
And you will just get a slate of powers or abilities based on your race.
Yeah, I think what we're going to see, an expanded. I think the things that you get in Tasha's for the classes are going to be in the base classes. The additional features, I think.
Oh, yeah.
This is where we're going to see the expanded sorcerer spell list that even I complained were missing from the previous sorcerers when they added them to the new ones in Tasha's. I think we'll see the subclasses of sorcerers have their added spell list.
Yeah.
Things like that. I think we're going to see. So I don't know if it will happen, but I think that we're going to see at least not all the subclasses that have been released since the player's handbook, but a good chunk of them. Probably the more popular ones in the core handbook. So the class section will be thicker.
I don't know. I think we will. It's not going to do that. I think it's going to. We're going to see a dramatic redesign.
Okay.
Of the class and subclass, the choice tree that players have. Because one of the big complaints about 5th edition is once you make your subclass choice, you're not making choices anymore.
How does that keep it backwards compatible?
Because you can either play these classes and subclasses as they're written, or in this new rules design, you will have features that you can choose at each one, and some of which will be have a prerequisite that you made the choice earlier on. Because that doesn't break compatibility. That just says you've made, because all that does is change potentially what you write in your features and traits. It doesn't change mechanics at
Okay.
all.
So you think instead of reprinting the subclasses, they're going to just put in features at the subclass levels?
Yeah.
And then if you're a generic barbarian, you have these features you can choose from, or you can choose one of the subclasses.
Or just make the subclass choices.
Oh, so you just get to pick a feature from this subclass or a feature from this subclass?
Yeah. Because that gets the people who went to Pathfinder for the granular choice every level. It gets those players back in. And if you want to stay with the regular class, subclass choice, and now you're here,
Yeah.
you can still play that way.
I don't know.
Because it has to be it has to be responsive to criticism, because that's what they said their goal is.
Yeah.
And it has to be backwards compatible. And to my mind, that's how they do it.
I can see what you're saying. For me, that breaks the feel of the subclasses. The subclasses have flavor, and there is specific niche of that. And just saying, hey, pick whatever feature from the level that you want, just destroys that for me.
And again, it's not this. These are options, and
Right.
you don't have to play this way, because not everyone's going to buy that book. But for people who want a more open-ended experience,
Yeah.
they will be drawn to that.
Okay.
And that's a change they can make in this new product, responding to criticism of the game.
I think I would prefer that you can either choose a subclass or be a generic of the class and have different features you can choose, which would also be a way to do it. I think my brain would prefer that, because that keeps the flavor of those subclasses unique to those subclasses, and still gives you the options of that tier building.
Okay.
I think you're probably right, and I totally understand where you're coming from with that. My brain just doesn't like it.
Yeah.
My preference would be option B, which is really the only other way, like you said, they can appease the critics, so to speak, and keep it backwards compatible.
Yeah.
It's one of those two options.
Yeah. And if you remember, 3 and 3.5 did something similar.
True.
Where they went to all the feats and all that stuff.
Yeah, the feats exploded in 3.5.
Yeah.
Your character became much more dependent on your feats than your class selections.
Right. So I could see them doing something like that. The updated monster manual they're promising.
The Morning Cannon? Or the updated core?
Core.
Okay.
Sounds interesting.
Yes.
Only because Morning Cannons that they previewed, some of the design choices in that were interesting.
Yeah.
Dumping spell slot tracking for NPCs for your monster stat blocks is going to help speed play for DMs.
Mm-hmm.
And more narrowly focusing their design in the damage output for the spellcasting monsters to make it more in line with the math that's behind it. Although there are people who contend that there's no math behind the CR. And that's probably more true than not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys went up against an adult dragon, a level 14 sorcerer, and
8 Dragonborn guards.
and 8 commoners. in one encounter, it ended up being. And they're level 6.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they won. So, well, not without sacrifice, but
Again, for me, the barbarian that tanked the dragon.
Yeah.
At the cost of his. But, I mean, no regrets.
Yeah. But yeah, so
the encounter was of our own making due to our, I'd say, inaction rather than action.
Yeah.
And that was due to wanting to appease a fellow party member. Could have been very different. Wasn't. It was very organic. No complaints. Like I told you, it wasn't how I wanted it to go, but once the first domino knocked, I could predict every domino that was going to fall and why.
Yeah.
Because it's what would happen.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if that's such a big deal with trying to bring the CR, the damage output, in line with the CR calculation. But just the fact that they're getting rid of spell slots and just saying this spellcasting ability now has just spells they can cast.
Yeah.
Maybe that means X number of times a day. Maybe it doesn't. I personally don't think it's going to say X number of times per day.
Right.
Just because monsters tend to be at one scene.
Yeah.
Or one encounter, which means 3 to 5 rounds of combat. So I think they might have taken a page out of Colville's book with action design, where the design of the monster has triggered abilities based on what round it is.
Okay.
So round 1, this monster is going to do this. Round 2, they're going to do this. Round 3, they're going to do this. And round 5, they're going to do this.
Okay.
And leaning more into the idea of legendary actions.
Okay.
To get around action economy.
Yeah.
Stuff that can...
Well, do you really... So if you're right and there's not X times a day and they can just do it, do they really need action economy when the wizard can just drop fireball every round, every combat?
Except they're not combat spells. Because that's one of the things that Jeremy said, is none of those spells are combat spells.
Well, most of those. He said they did sprinkle in some combat too.
Yeah. But that, I think that's going to be more along the lines of
its own separate
cantrips
action.
Or its own action.
Which will have its own uses per.
Yeah. Or a recharge, maybe.
Yeah. I could see them going recharge.
Yeah. Because a recharge gives the illusion of...
spell slots.
Yeah. Of a resource management.
Yeah.
And it's easier to keep track of. So, yeah. But I think the biggest one for that, the biggest selling point for that book is going to be the stuff that sort of came out in Tasha's.
Mm-hmm.
With the race stuff. I think that's going to be the biggest ever.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, and they did say they're going to be updating the wording, so like everything in the player's handbook that has racial spells will be able to cast them once, plus use spell slots if they have them to cast those racial spells.
Yeah.
Which I love that. I think that's great that they do that.
Yeah, which makes sense.
It gives you a little bit of magic in your martial classes, and it gives you a lot more versatility in your spellcasting classes because you don't have to waste time. If you're the fairy, you don't have to waste time learning Enlarge Reduce or Fairy Fire.
Yeah.
If you're a drow, you don't have to waste time learning Darkness.
Yeah, you already know the spell. So why can't you just use the spell slot?
Just use the spell slot to cast it.
Yeah.
So that gives them more versatility. And especially for classes like the Sorcerer or the Warlock, that have limited spell slots. Gives them that extra feel of magic.
Yeah. We may see further support for whatever new settings come out.
Yes.
They said 1 is next year.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, two next year.
2 next year, and one of those will have a peak at a third, and then 1 the following year.
Yeah.
Which tells me, so here's my call, and I think you agree with me on these. Next year we will get Dragonlance, because that's when the books drop.
Yep.
And I think we will get, I want to say Spelljammer, but either Spelljammer or Planescape will be the second one next year. Hinted at by Boo, the Space Hamster, and hinted at by Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse, and Jeremy Crawford saying we're dealing with the multiverse.
Yeah.
And I think the cameo will be Dark Sun. Because like we talked earlier, I don't think Dark Sun's coming out till they're happy with Psionics, and I'm not sure they are yet. So I think Dark Sun is actually going to come out after 5.5 drops.
Yes. After those books will be...
And I think the following one will be a different setting that's not Dark Sun.
Well,
what it will
one
be,
of their new ones. Because Chris said they're developing 2 new settings.
But when he was talking about when they were talking about those 3 in 2022, 2023, they said those were established settings.
Yes.
So that third one will not be Dark Sun, because that's coming out before the core rulebook drop.
Mm.
It will be now what? Maybe it will be the other of Planescaper. Maybe it will be. I mean, who knows? There's so many that they could tap from. Alcadia, Hollow Earth, Oriental Adventures.
I will say that here's my speculation on the 2 new settings that they're talking about.
Okay.
They will be released together.
Okay.
In Magic and D&D.
Okay, I can see that. My first thought when they first started talking about it was we're getting more Magic settings. But then when he talked about it in the vein of Eberron, Holy Created, I was like, okay, it's not going to be Magic-based settings. But yeah, I can definitely see them.
Yeah.
Here's a setting. Oh, look, what I would like to see is WotC do on the D&D side what they do on the Magic side. You go to the Magic side, they know like the next 5 years what sets are dropping when. The name of the set, what it's going to. I wish they'd give us a roadmap. Even if it's just the titles. Hey, you're getting this book here, rather than keep it so secret all,
Yeah. Yeah, but that would require a change in culture. That I don't think we'll see. Because that requires planning on the level of Feige.
Yeah.
And Marvel at Disney. And Disney has the deep pockets.
Yeah.
To say, okay, we're going to spend $3 billion a year on your movies for the next 20 years. Make whatever you want.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, so I don't think they've released any particular information on the new D&D movie. Other than like casting information and stuff.
Yeah. That I believe it started filming.
So
and cast members.
My guess is one of those 3 books is going to be related to the D&D movie.
Okay. You don't think it's just going to be a Forgotten Realms based setting movie?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I
mean, I can definitely see the argument both ways. One.
Okay, no, okay. if it's like Baldur's Gate or Neverwinter's Nights, where they're going with a video game that has been put out,
which I don't think they are. I mean, it could be smart because they've never done that in all their movies.
Yeah. Whereas if they tie it to one of the game franchises, the video game franchises, even without copying the story, like a movie called Neverwinter Nights evokes.
Yeah,
it's an evocative title. Diablo or Baldur's Gate, like those are evocative and fertile ground.
Yeah.
And those properties have characters that the studio can glom onto.
Yeah.
There's more there than just that reads D&D based on the title or a character. Which is, I think, one of the things that the other D&D movies lacked.
Yeah.
There was nothing that said, this is D&D.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's based on a video game, and those are all Forgotten Realms. So if it's Forgotten Realms, that will be, I think, the tack that they go. But I think it's a missed opportunity of synergy.
Yeah.
For them not to use one of these new setting books to go with the movie.
Yeah. I agree.
So that's why I think that's where that's going to go.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What else were we doing?
Well, we talked a little bit about Mordenkainen Presents Launches the Multiverse. That's coming out in a gift box set in January with an updated.
Do you think
Xanathars
it's
and
going?
Tasha's.
Yeah, do you think it's going to be sold separately?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe they said that in a different panel.
Okay.
That it later on, initially it will be only available in the box set, and later on it will be available on its own.
Gotcha.
I did not see the panel where they said that, but one of the channels that I watch on YouTube that covers that kind of stuff said that they said, and he's a pretty reliable source, you know him.
Yeah.
Said that it would be available later the same year. So I'm thinking summer.
The other big thing that I think will prove that I was right months ago, like a year ago, saying this. Wizards is going to buy D&D Beyond or launch their own virtual tabletop.
Yep.
Because there were a couple buzzwords in that future panel where I'm like, okay, yeah, that's virtual tabletop.
We're going to be releasing these books in a way we've never done before.
In formats we've never done. And they talked about delivering experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And those are corporate buzzwords for digital space stuff. And Wizards as a company cannot see the business that Fantasy Grounds,
Roll20.
I can't remember the name of the company that does that, but yeah, Roll20's parent company, are raking in. That's money they're leaving on D&D Beyond.
Yeah.
Those three sources amount to something like, I think it's like $100 million a year or something like that. They can't leave that money on the table.
Yeah. And that leads to another speculation that this person I watched drop that I think is valid. I think they're going to do away with the open game license for the new edition. And here was his logic, especially if they're doing it. So you've got the DM's Guild where you can publish stuff, but D&D gets like half the profit right off the top. So what you can do is you can print for the newest, hottest edition via DM's Guild alone, so they get that huge chunk. Or you can go with the old 5 edition, which is still backwards compatible, you know, but it's not the hot new thing, and do your Kickstarter or whatever and get all the money for yourself. But if you do with the new edition, then we get a chunk of your profits no matter what.
It's a good argument,
That was his speculation.
but I don't think it will. I don't think they will do that.
Okay.
For the very big reason that the independent publishers who publish these things and do Kickstarters,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a lot of money. One,
Okay.
it's not virtual tabletop money.
Right.
And two, those products and the open gaming license that allows those kinds of things to happen has only served to fuel the brand
That's true.
and expand
Mm-hmm.
the.
It's basically free advertising.
Because to play that person's expansion or rule set or whatever, you have to have
The new edition.
the Big Daddy. You have to have the game. So it doesn't hurt them to allow those things to happen.
For a never be. So, one last speculation that this person made that I want to touch on. I wanted to get your review capture when they were talking about the brand new settings. He said a modern setting because it had never done before, but it has been done by WotC in the D20 Modern. It wasn't exactly D&D because it had different classes and stuff, but they have dabbled in the modern setting.
Yes. So, and I thought about that because, and principally, the way my brain got there was Dimension 20
Mm-hmm.
has the Sleeping City.
Yeah.
Which is basically modern day New York
D&D.
D&D. With spells, paladins, classes, everything.
Yeah.
So I think it's there. And if not that, then a sci-fi setting. Something akin to Raku.
Yeah. Which I could see them doing, especially like with the resurgence of Doom in the new movie and stuff like that.
So, and there's sections in the DMG that discuss sci-fi settings, and there's a small section for weapons and technology stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I can see either of those, or maybe both.
Both, yeah. 1 and 2.
Yeah. So
especially if they set the movie after one of the video games.
Yeah. So last half of the show, I think we should get to State of the Rule, maybe.
Yeah.
State of the Rule this Thursday. They're saying that they've previewed some big announcements, or have said that they're going to have a couple.
Yeah.
And in the preview of this State of the Role, they said we will be announcing when Campaign 3 is going to start. I've been thinking about it, and before Exandria Unlimited, we speculated that perhaps we would see it in October.
Mm-hmm.
September, October.
Right.
I don't think it's going to start until November.
Okay.
And the reason I have glommed onto this, my thought process, is November traditionally is sweeps month.
Okay.
That's when sweeps is. And if CR is trying to get things done with other corporate partners,
mm-hmm.
debuting in November during sweeps, because the first episode of a new season, the new campaign, always has the most views.
Yeah.
The most live viewers dwarfs any other episode.
Yeah.
And the viewership of the first 4 or 5 episodes is greater than the last 40.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going to be November, and it will coincide with the release of Legends of Vox Machina.
Okay.
Which we know the episodes have been done 3 months? 4 months?
Something like that.
Where they've been done enough that the cast has watched them, and it's in the tweaking phase of post-production before the release date. But for cartoons, that generally, you're not making many changes.
Yeah.
If you're going to make any changes to dialogue or ADR, do ADR, additional ADR, you're doing it to whatever lip flaps are there.
Yeah.
Because animation takes a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think, and this phase also is when usually your soundtrack is being recorded.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of that is being done because Sam's been on vacation.
Okay.
Unless they recorded all of Scanlan's songs while they were recording the dialogue. So, yeah. And I think, so the good news is, I guess, good news, bad news. Campaign 3 probably not starting until November. But, good news, Legend of Vox Machina is probably going to drop in November.
Yeah.
Because I think what the ideal situation for the synergy of the projects is Rose, same. I struggle to keep enthusiasm up as well.
Yeah.
But it just makes, like, to me, it just makes sense because you want to start the new campaign where they have the most viewers, where they can say, by the way, Legend of Vox Machina is live on Amazon Prime.
Where they can plug it every week.
Yeah.
And even do, like, commercials during the break.
Yep. So, that's my feeling. I think they will probably be announcing whatever secondary show they're going to have, whether it be Exandria Unlimited, if that remains the name of that show, whoever is the DM or whoever is the cast of that.
Yeah.
We may get an announcement of a new permanent cast member. And I think it might be Mika.
Okay. I'm not sure they're going to add anyone just yet.
Why do you say that?
Okay, it hinges mainly on a comment that Matt made when Orion left.
Yes, Rose, you're right. I had forgotten that Mika was taking over Talks. And you can't have the host of Talks at the table. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But Abria could.
Yeah.
Who was my second choice.
But when Orion left, And in the months after that, people asked, are they going to replace him? Are they going to replace him? Who's going to? And Matt was like, that's a lot of people. I'm more comfortable with this, an occasional guest star, but I don't want to do more than that. And that's why I say I don't think they're going to add another. Now, that doesn't mean that things haven't changed in the how many years since that happened, and that he might be like, okay, let's do this again and be ready for that. But just something tells me,
yeah, there's definitely truth to that sentiment. But Matt, like me, is comfortable with a large group.
yes.
And I think to spare any sort of animosity between they and Orion, and to keep it simple, it was, we're not replacing Orion for this season. And campaign 2, we're starting fresh. And then when they launched the Foundation, the Red Dragonborn was edited out of the early Vox Machina origin story, of Critical Role's origin story. So if they're going to add somebody, this is the time to do it, when they're bringing on new people.
Yeah.
So they've got Abria, Robbie, Amy, all voice actors, all local to them.
You've got Mika, who's been, although the show is infrequent, co-hosting Critter Hug with Matt.
Yeah. Well, and I think Rose is right.
Yeah, I think she is too.
Reminded me of her taking over for Brian.
100%. There was the joking about her doing it when she guest starred. She took over like 2 or 3 episodes when he was out doing something else.
Yeah. So and
if they do introduce a new castmate, I think it will either be Amy or Robbie. Probably Robbie. I don't know why. I don't have any reason to pick Robbie over Amy. My gut says that's who they'll go with.
And I think it will be Amy or Abria.
Yeah. I'd love to see Amy and just watch her progress as a player, since this was her first time playing. I would love that. That would be my pick if I got to choose.
Yeah.
My gut says they're going to go Robbie. I think Abria does too many things with too many other channels to nail herself down to one for that long a period of time. She might, because it's steady work.
Yeah.
But, and I don't know.
Yeah, she does all these things with all these other channels because she doesn't have a steady gig.
But most of the stuff she does is with Dimension 20.
But yes, I could see it happening. Not that I think it will happen. I think most likely you bringing up Matt's statement of it's easier with 7 is 100% accurate.
Yeah. I think we'll see, even if one of them is picked as a new cast member, we're going to see the other 2 as guest stars in Campaign 3. Or we'll see all 3 of them as guest stars in Campaign 3. In my opinion.
Yeah, I wouldn't discount that. Rose, when you say veteran edge, do you mean
Ashley asking how to D&D every week.
well, no, just the I lost my metaphor, but yes, we're here again
No.
to do this again. Yeah, the old hat syndrome. Yeah, having a new player always does that, which is one of the reasons why I like recruiting new players.
Yeah, like personally, I'd love to see Amy there. Like I said, just see her journey as a new player. Robbie's still a pretty new player. He had only been in one game before, I think, or two. I would love to see Robbie on there because I'd love to see the interaction of him and Sam.
Okay.
I think they would play off each other well. And I'm judging that solely based on his portrayal of Dorian. I could see the way he was playing being something that Sam, a Sam type character would interact with.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think, and then we'll announce when Talks Machnia will return.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're gonna announce the start of Campaign 3, it doesn't make sense to not also announce Talks Machnia.
Campaign 3, Talks Machnia. I think they're gonna announce a drop date for the revised Tal'Dorei book.
Okay.
Strictly because the announcement they gave of it was late 2021, early 2022. That's getting pretty close.
Yeah.
It's about time we get the release date of that.
Yeah. And maybe they were delaying it for the airing of Exandria Unlimited.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe. I could see that.
And possibly, if you're right and they're dropping everything in November, the premiere date of Legends.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of information.
Yeah. Trying to think if there will probably be some sort of ease of use between the Critical Role Foundation and the Critical Role shop. I.e., Foundation swag may be starting to be sold in the Critical Role shop.
Yeah.
If you can't already do that, I don't know. I'm not a shopper. But yeah. Do you think we will see an attempt to do a Mighty Nine cartoon?
Yes and no. And let me explain why I say it that way.
Okay.
Yes, and it will be characters we saw in the Mighty Nine. No, and it will not be the Mighty Nine as a group. What I can see is post-campaign, since they weren't level 20, I could see a show about Ford and Jester on the open sea. And then you can have Caleb, or even a show about Kingsley, an untapped character, out on the open sea.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could have Jester and Ford and Caleb and, everybody guest starring in different episodes.
Interesting.
The reason why the Vox Machina is so much more accessible as a group cartoon is because we had all those home games that the audience wasn't privy to.
That's fair.
And other than the level 1 to level 2 session 0 that wasn't shown, we saw their progression.
Yeah, well, and we basically found out what happened in those.
Yeah. So it will either be end of campaign on because they didn't reach level 20 in their adventures, or it'll be someone like Kingsley, or even Untold Tales of Essex.
Well, if we're going to just throw stuff at the wall, there's potential for a harem cartoon with Jester at the center. There's a romance anime potential between Jester and Ford, and or Veth and
Yes, or the Minotaur?
Okay, a fantasy romance anime with Beth and anyone else that she.
No, but I mean, I think either
or
a show,
Boyasha, crime drama, romance.
Yeah, I mean, you could do any of those, but honestly, I think a Ford and Jester on the open sea, or a Kingsley, and how they said he maybe even becomes the plank, him rising to fame in the Revelry. I think that would be a good cartoon. I think that would be along the lines of Magi Sinbad, which
detective story,
World's Best Detective Agency. Of Sinbad from the Magi series anime, or Pirates of Darkwater, or
it's fair.
Treasure Planet, Muppet Treasure Island.
Yeah,
I think that has a lot of potential.
Yeah. And Rose, you're same characters but new story. Yeah, is where I think it's likely going to go, if we see anything. I don't know. I also don't know if there's the same level of attachment and excitement for the Mighty Nine as there was for Vox Machina.
I can completely feel that.
I mean, not amongst the fan base, because I think arguably the fan base is possibly more enamored with the Mighty Nine than with Vox Machina, but the cast is much more.
I think there are specific characters in the Mighty Nine that are much more attachable to the fan base. I think as a whole, Vox Machina is more. And it's mainly Jester and Caleb. Probably, maybe Bo too. But I think the characters as a whole, Mighty Nine, Vox Machina, the Vox Machina as a whole, as a group, is a more centered towards. That may just be my outlook on it and my personal thing, but that's and that's also part of why I think maybe after the campaign and same characters, new stories, like Rose said, but just Ford and Chester out on the ship, or Caleb and Essek doing wizard things.
Yeah. And like, because the reason I asked that is because we may get a.
That is true.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the other.
That's 100% valid counterpoint.
So
to
many
what I
people
said,
started with campaign 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I say for the fan base, there's more attachment to the Mighty Nine.
Yeah.
Than Vox Machina, but for the cast, it's Vox Machina because that's what started this whole thing.
Yeah. And maybe I feel the way I do about this characters because I started like in or episode 3 of campaign 1.
Yeah, and I started
been around
episode 1.
I've been around for the I even went as far as to get Vox Machina tattooed on my forearm in Draconic. Level of fandom.
Yeah. So yeah,
but. I could see them doing something, but I don't think it's going to be like the origin story like Vox Machina is.
No
cartoon. I could see them doing something after they split up, and it could be like, hey, we're doing different arcs. We've got, what would be great is Jester and Knot get hired to solve a crime, and it turns out the crime spree they're investigating is Bo and Yasha.
I mean, it'd be funny, but I don't think that's... Most of what's been said about Bo and Yasha from Ashley and Marisha, and also sort of the fan headcanon, collective headcanon, is that Bo settles into being an expositor and takes up her authority position.
But that doesn't mean she doesn't commit mail fraud from time to time.
It's not a crime if you do it for the state.
Fair point.
I had to think long and hard whether I wanted to say that or not.
Valid.
Yeah, so...
That's why the military calls them snipers and not assassins.
Yeah. And why there's a documentary on Curiosity Stream about an actor turned militia fighter to go fight ISIS.
Mm-hmm.
And the quote from him is, "I signed up to shoot in Syria, but not a camera."
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. That gray area of killing people. Not in the armed services, but in a militia-like group, in a conflict area. Could you be charged with murder? Maybe, maybe not, probably not. How can they prove anything?
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, also the concept of immunity.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. If they are going to announce any cartoon plans for the Mighty Nine or continued stories, I imagine they will announce a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
But I also think they're not going to do that again because they don't want to endanger any development deals that they have ongoing in negotiation with Amazon.
Yeah, no, I think what's going to happen is they'll get through at least seasons 1 and 2. If the popularity is there, Amazon will sign on for a Mighty Nine series in addition.
Yeah, I think so too. Which is great for the cast because, I mean, literally they're going to be writing their own checks now.
Yeah.
For
the foreseeable
voice
future.
acting work. Yeah. So, yeah. Which is why I didn't bother asking if you think we'll ever see any of them drop. Because I think the answer to that is no.
Yeah.
But anyway, we will be back next week where we will discuss what is discussed on State of the Rule on Thursday, probably. And maybe some of the stuff that I've been toying with that we play tested Sunday, and we will continue to play test this Sunday.
Yep.
Till then, see you guys.
Bye, guys.